Morning, and thank you for joining us at this Cyburgh breakout session, Integrating Offensive Security, presented by Luke McOmie, VP of Offensive Security at Bastion. Luke, thanks for being here with us today. The virtual stage is yours.
Thank you, Allison. Good morning, everyone. Appreciate you joining us today. We're going to talk about integrating security. I'm going to have a bit of an offensive focus in that just because of my role. But really, we're going to kind of try to step through things pretty quickly today. Introductions. A little bit about me. I am the Vice President of Offensive Security at Bastion, an ideal integrations company. I've worked and been in this industry since about 1994 and actively contribute to a lot of different things within the community, conferences, founded Sky Talks, gooned at DEF CON for a long time, but it's awarded me a lot of opportunities to get a unique view on the industry and kind of how things are being conducted and done. What are we doing here today? We're going to talk about how, for years, we've all relied on blue teams. We have firewalls. There's a lot of defensive tactics that are being used to defend our networks. But when I still reach out and talk to companies, I find that they're really focused on doing once-a-year pen testing or drive-by pen testing. Maybe even if they have an offensive capability in-house, they still find themselves doing a lot of that work through third-party vendor once or twice a year kind of a deal. We're going to go through a kind of a quick discussion today where we talk about the importance of why you need to attack and how you need to start integrating offensive security into your approach so that you're not just single-sided or one-sided. How are we going to get it done? So they said that I've got 20 minutes here. I think or 30 minutes total. But over the next 20 minutes, I'm going to try to talk to you guys and motivate you to make this change. I promise it won't be full of buzzwords, silver bullets, egos. I'm not trying to sell you anything. This is really a discussion around things that I've observed over my career and things that have kind of helped create and build the practice that I lead now, and why we're finding that a slightly different approach to how we've been doing things is key and important right now. Discussion topics today, we're going to talk about industry worst practices, how we keep doing it wrong. And I think that this is valid after some of the recent Facebook and Twitter posts that we've seen over the last week or two with people that have been providing some pretty bad advice around how we handle security situations out there. We're going to talk about today's challenge and why things are so tough today. And in this ever complex environment that just keeps getting harder and harder. How are we going to figure out ways to be able to do this stuff right, and where are we getting in our own way? We're also going to talk about what's broken and how we get on that right path. So really identifying, what are the next steps that we can take to make sure that we are moving down our security journey and constantly maturing. And then we're going to talk about how we start integrating security to make that successful. At the end, hopefully I'll have a little bit of time for Q&A if I don't talk too long. So if I start droning on, Allison, just give me the thumbs up to make sure I'm not going too long. Worst practices. So the way I want to talk about this isn't necessarily a, you need to do this each day or you need to have these firewall rules. I want to talk about what's said versus what is real. And I'm not going to go through each one of these because time is tight today. But as you can see over on the left-hand side of the screen, these are a lot of statements that I hear on a daily basis from customers that I work with. And they're valid. I mean, these are true statements. These are based upon best practices that have happened, separation of companies, making sure that you're at least doing annual pen testing once a year for your compliance needs. There's a lot of different stuff that's here that I'm sure you can associate with. The problem is what's real, and what I really hear is the right side of the screen. So when we talk about stuff and people are talking about changing their security providers year over year, all I really hear is that they're starting at square one, right? A clean slate. Each year, they go through the same type of testing. They see the same type of results. Maybe they get better, maybe they don't, but there's really no way to be able to provide a delta or be able to demonstrate and show how things are getting better over time. So you need to connect to that type of a thing. Also, when you start talking about using a bunch of different companies to do things like your managed security providing, your engineering, your security services, your compliance, and all of these others, you end up with a lack of communication and focus. So, you end up having audit fatigue because these people who are working throughout your business are being asked, 5, 6, 10 times a year, depending upon how many different audits or how many different assessments you're doing, you know, the same questions you've already heard or that they've maybe potentially already answered once before. We're going to touch on that a little bit deeper when we get into this. As you can see, kind of going down this, you know, it's really the key here is that stop focusing on specific faults or specific problems and think larger about your business. I'm going to use a term that everybody hates right now, but it is it is a holistic approach. See, I can't even say it right. It sounds so salesy. But it's really what we're going to be talking about a lot today. Today's challenges, we talk about why it's so hard, right? Security budgets are typically being based on compliance need. I don't understand this. I never have gotten this, right? When you talk to a large business and they are like, well, we have to be PCI certified. And since we're working with the government, we're going after high trust. So here are all our plans and projects and everything that we're going to do over the next year to get to that point. And here's how our security budget's been defined to help us get there. It's kind of the cart before the horse. Like, you should be defining your security budget in a way that enables your security program, the people who work for you or who are partnering with you, to be able to be successful. If you do that, then those compliance checkboxes just kind of fill themselves, right? Maybe you have a gap or two that you have to address direct on with a specific requirement or providing evidence or something like that. But my point to this is that if you have a good, solid, secure environment, compliance kind of follows, not the other way around. Lack of and cost of talent. I get it, right? When we talk about our workforce right now, for every 100 jobs that we have out there, we have about 40 qualified applicants. That's some real numbers for what we're seeing out there. And when you start talking about the process of going through and filtering and looking at this stuff, larger corporations will see 1,000 applicants that they can boil down to 100 people that end up being 10 people interviewed and 1 job being given. Right? I get that those are broad numbers, but it really gives you an idea of what people are going through right now to try to find good talent. And it's very expensive. So one of the things that I constantly tell people, especially if you're a smaller or medium-sized business, is quit trying to do this in-house. Take that same money and partner with somebody that can bring you world-level class talent that knows what they're doing, has a long history of being very successful in doing this work. And make sure that those people are well supported through the contracts and through your internal points of contact to make sure that they have everything they need to be able to do the job that you've hired them for. Pay attention to those worst practices that we talked about a little bit earlier. It's really easy to fall into these. Just because it's been the way it's always been done doesn't mean it's the way we should do it moving forward. Get away from manual processes. We see a lot of people right now that spend a lot of time grinding and grinding, doing the same thing day after day after day. Right? My coworker, Corey, one of his big things is that if he has to do something twice, he's just going to script it and automate it so that it doesn't have to be repeated again. That type of focus can really make it to where your effort and your time can be, really directed towards the things that are going to make a difference in your environment versus sitting there just burning hours doing the same thing over and over again. Single focus and siloing. I can talk about this for hours, so I'm going to be pretty quick on this. But what I mean is, historically, we've always been told to bust out all the different areas of the business into their own individual silos, and then they will operate within their own areas. From a security standpoint of separation, that's a brilliant idea. From a business management and a security oversight, it's horrible. And the reason being is that you end up with these single focused teams that really are only worried about the one thing that they've been tasked or challenged with, right? Maybe they have one compliance requirement or one compliance need that they have to follow. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they have any idea of what's going on in the rest of the business. Move away from siloing and single focus by bringing teams of people together to where you have boards that can work towards these larger projects. And when you do that, it makes it to where you have input from all of the different areas of the business and from all the different stakeholders without it having to be something that gets buried or lost into the weeds, right? Again, it's one of those that we could go into an entire speech about, but if you want to follow up with me, following the speech, feel free to throw some time on my calendar. Increasing complexity is a big one as well. Nothing's getting simpler. We all know this. Shaming and punishing failure. This is one of my big thorns this week. After reading the article that had came out, I believe it was The Hill that had published it, and you've got a gentleman sitting there saying that we should hire or that we should fire people if they've ever experienced an incident. We shouldn't hire security individuals if they've ever worked for a company that's been compromised. These are absolute unrealistic expectations. And why would you ever hire anyone that doesn't have experience, right? Same thing with people that get phished. Just because somebody fell for a phishing email doesn't mean that you should punish them, right? This concept of firing people or 3 strikes or you're out, it is the wrong way to be thinking about security. You need to be focused on getting buy-in. And repeating history, this obviously is a big issue. You know, if you've made a mistake, if you've had a problem in the past, if you've been compromised, take the steps and actions to fix it. Same thing with dealing with your penetration testing results that are coming back from your providers or your internal teams. If you're not remediating the vulnerabilities and the weaknesses that they're exploiting, what are you doing? Quit treading water, quit wasting time. Again, I could talk about this all day long, but the focus here, you see why things have been difficult and hard for us lately. Let's talk about how we fix it, right? So when we move into this stuff and we start talking about ways that we can make a difference and make things work better, automation is key, right? I talked about Corey's little cheat that he does there where he just scripts everything to make it quicker and easier. You know, there are ways that you can do this with business process software, CRMs, all kinds of other types of things that make your life way, way easier. So take the time to automate something so that you don't have to do it 100 times. Collaborative approach versus zero knowledge. This is another one where I have frustration with the industry. Everybody has it in their mind that their third-party pen tester needs to come in and do a blind assessment and approach and an attack against them. And, you know, oh, we're going to target your external and your internal systems with zero knowledge, and we're going to see, you know, what we can find, what we can look at. That's great from a single instance or a single campaign inside of threat modeling. But what does it really give the client? From a value perspective, they're seeing a one-off point in time type opportunity. If you do a collaborative approach and you're working with a partner that then has intimacy about your environment, the programs, the things that are important to your business, the pieces that make it go, this is how you're going to see some real true value through offensive testing, red teaming, purple teaming, because they're going to be able to leverage that knowledge as if they're an internal employee or if they're an attacker that has potentially had, you know, a year or two to sit there and study you and to do analysis. Again, point in time testing, when you talk about even information gathering, and a real attacker is not limited to a day or two of looking at you before they start targeting and attacking your systems, which is what we see most common in the programs that the industry currently uses for pen testing. We're talking more about larger programmatic approaches where you can now have, you know, steps where it gets everly harder, gets more and more complex in the ways that we do the attacks, and we start doing blended threat approach. This stuff is huge, and you can only get that through true collaboration. Leverage your data and understand why your data is saying what it's saying, not just what it's saying. We see a lot of people that are like, yeah, I take in 2.5 terabytes of log data a day. Great. What do you do with it? Are you using that information to be able to have more intelligence about your environment, what's going on? If not, you're missing a huge treasure trove of information there. We talked about merging the silos. Measure once, report many. I worked with a gentleman, Nick Vijay, brilliant man, CISO right now at a financial company. And one of his, identity company, he moved. One of his big things is this measure once, report many. So I want to give him credit for it. And it's the concept of go in as, again, with a partner and do an assessment of your entire environment, your business processes, your facilities, your wireless environments, your applications. Look at your entire business as a whole, record that information and data. And then when you go through the audit process, you'll already have all the evidence and all of the information you need to be able to check the boxes and be able to provide the data for the people who are conducting the audit. This again is a way to demonstrate and show security first feeds compliance, right? Versus it being compliance first, forcing security to kind of fall in line with what the compliance checkboxes say. Go the other way at it. Measure once, report many. Threat modeling is huge. Continuous testing is huge. The concept of having somebody come in and do a pen test once a year, print you out a PDF and walk out the door, those days are done. Really, what value does that give you? If you're not doing continuous testing, then you have no idea what your environment looks like or what state it's in since the last time that you conducted a test. And for many of you that are only doing once a year pen testing, that means that there's 364 days, right? Since the last time that you saw a audit of your environment to know how you are from a security health perspective. Move into continuous testing where you have vulnerability management program. You have a vulnerability management program going on at all times. You're doing active penetration testing. You're working with the various teams to bring things together to make sure that you are ever increasing your security posture while decreasing the exposure and the risks that you have inside your environment. Again, be risk focused, don't count vulns. You know, if you are an executive and you are really focused on how many critical vulnerabilities or medium or low vulnerabilities you have, you're looking at it the wrong way. Start thinking about what those vulnerabilities are doing to introduce risk into your business and how that impacts your business. If you are risk focused versus vulnerability counting focused, you're going to go a lot further and you'll get a lot more value out of the work that your teams and your staff are doing for you. Again, we talk about security as a foundation, not an afterthought. Make sure as you are deploying and building your business, security should be part of each step of that business. It shouldn't be something like, hey, we're creating this big, massive business. We're deploying a website. Here's our launch date. Can you do a pen test for us 2 weeks before you guys go live? Worst way in the world to do your business. Make sure that it's integrated with your development, your release lifecycle, and the business itself as it's being spun up and brought up. We've talked about the shape your approach to compliance, not your business. Really, all I'm saying there is make compliance fit you, right? You have a specific set of required controls that have to be there, have to be in place. That's fine. Make sure you address those the way that you can through your business, but don't modify your business to try to address compliance needs, right? Again, you're going out at the wrong direction. If I'm doing something to check a box, I'm doing it for the wrong reasons, right? You see that at the bottom of the screen. It's one of my big things. When I hear a client say, I need to check a box, it means I need to have a better conversation with them to understand what's really going on and what's really motivating and driving this. Going back to the offensive security side of things, think and act like an attacker. Learn to be offensive. If all you ever do is defend and block, then you're never going to know how a punch is thrown, right? So how are you going to see it coming? It's really a big key. I see a lot of people who have massive blue team budgets and then little itty bitty red team budgets. And it doesn't make sense to me because there really should be a true balance. When you look at organizations like Oracle, Microsoft, Google, a lot of these big companies, they have defined teams for red, blue, purple, green, pink, whatever, to be able to do these different activities because of the importance. So don't go light on one side or the other, right? A strong defense is nothing without a good offense. So have some balance. All right. So how do we integrate security? This goes into more of the process of what you should be thinking about, right? So when you look at business, really, security should not be compliance driven. It needs to be prioritized based upon your company's mission, vision, culture, goals, all those things that make your business a successful business. Security needs to be part of how you approach that and how you think into that, right? Build it into your policy and your procedures. Also, make sure that, as we were just talking about before, that it's continuous. You want near real-time data that's actionable and ever evolving. The worst thing you can do is have a bunch of stagnant data that means nothing sitting on a PDF or a Word document on the edge of a desk. It doesn't do anything for you. Really also focus on that blended approach like we were talking about. I've got the bad pyramid here in the center of the screen. And this is not my work. I respect the work of the people who put this together, which is why you see it here. But it really does show a good example of how red and blue work together to do those purple team engagements. And when you start talking about yellow teaming, being the building side of the business, then you also get the orange and green interactions that occur with the red and blue team. And as you do this, you can define and change the way that you're going about business, the way that you're conducting your business, and the way that you're building. Look up bad pyramid if you want better examples and a good detail and a run through on that. Again, that's one of those that could take up 20 minutes of time by itself. When you get into tech, it's really a list of questions. You know, what's there? How is it being built or deployed? How is it being maintained and monitored? What are single points of failure that exist? And how can I compromise it, right? If you think about approaching just with those 5 little things in mind as you approach your security programs and your vision and your mission and as you're moving things forward, you're going to catch yourself on a lot of little hangups where it's like, well, you know, we know that we've got a bunch of websites and we know that they're sitting out in Amazon, but we have no idea what they were developed with. And I don't know that anyone's actively maintaining them or monitoring them, right? Yeah, maybe we have some basic security controls in place, but these are the types of things that if you start asking yourself these questions during the build and during the process of business, you'll start changing the way that you do this, and it'll automatically integrate and become part of just your day-to-day operation. When we talk about humans, culture is huge, right? I talked a little bit about this at the start of the slide, or at the start of the slideshow, but it really, my focus here is how important it is to have strength in numbers, right? If you have people who are excited about security and you are breeding a rewarding culture within your business, this is something where you're providing quality hands-on training. People are getting to see how easy some of this stuff is, right? One of my favorite things about the security awareness trainings that I do is a focus on demystifying hacking, right? We take away the magic. We show you just how simple it is. And I love being able to take somebody random out of the audience, sit them down to a laptop and have them run a Metasploit module to demonstrate how quickly they could have hacked a system within your environment. Same kind of thing, right? We teach lockpicking courses. We teach all these other types of things. And where you may think it's insane or weird to want to teach lockpicking to your employees, it's a great way to get them passionate about security and to get them thinking about how this stuff works. Lockpicking is a great example because we all grow up thinking locks are the secret to everything. And then as soon as you learn to pick a lock and you realize how incredibly simple it is, it kind of breaks your brain and you start thinking about all these other things in life of like, well, if it's that simple to pick a lock that's used for security, what are all the other things that I may be overlooking or just assuming are protecting me and taking care of me? That type of a change in their brain will modify how they act and how they work for you as an employee and how often they get pwned by something like a malicious phone call or email, because they'll start becoming more suspicious. Reward good behavior. Don't do threats. Again, if you're threatening to fire people or let people go because they are, having issues or they have been compromised, you're doing the wrong thing. Instead, you need to incentivize this and gamify it, right? Make it fun for them. Make it that every single time they report a spam message that gets through filtering, you give them something like a $20 gift card, to Starbucks or whatever it is. Just make it to where they feel that they're part of the process, that they're involved, and that they're important. The worst thing you want are a bunch of employees who feel like your security staff or your security partner are some crazy elite force off in a dark corner with, the windows drawn in a dark room. Wrong mentality, right? We want it to be welcoming. We want people to see that it's approachable and easy to do. And as long as we can gamify it or incentivize people in a way that makes it attractive to them, we will forever be stronger and more secure for it. Here's some homework for you. As you go and you're wrapping up your day here, really step through and ask yourself, what are your top priorities, threats, and strengths? Are you addressing and thinking about that in the way that you approach your business? How do you plan to address those threats in 2021? Really what I mean with that is world's changed a lot over the last year and a half, right? Everybody's work remote now. People are moving to data centers. People are abandoning old buildings that used to be, big brick and mortar style offices. How is that going to change the way that you are going to operate as you move forward? Think about how you're going to advance your business through security. This is an interesting one, but it's a way that, figure out ways that you can take what you're doing in security and make that something that's attractive to your customers and clients. For example, if you are a data center provider and all of a sudden you employ a service like Cloudflare or something like that, being able to now tell your customers that you're providing that to them as a service is something that makes your business more attractive while securing your business at the same time. Figure out ways to use that to your advantage. Also, what are you doing to create a secure security culture in your business? Are you making it fun? Do you have cool trainings, or is everyone just going through a once a year web-based, do I know which radio button to click security awareness training? Those trainings are pointless. They're pointless. You pay for them to check a compliance box. Move to richer content, hire and bring somebody in, or to do a remote session that really gets hands-on, that can help people understand what they're vulnerable to and what they're most likely to see as an attack in their business. Again, Do you have an MSSP, or are you doing it in-house, and why? Ask yourself these questions and decide if it's the right one for you. Are you leveraging offensive services? And what I mean leveraging, that's not once a year pen test. That means you're doing quarterly testing, you're doing weekly vulnerability scanning. And what are you going to do if you have an incident? Make sure that you've at least tabletopped this, which is like the weakest form of testing, but make sure that you've at least tabletop running through an incident so that you know that you have the right contacts, partners, and people in place to be able to deal with that situation so that you're not scrambling when the house is on fire. And also, who is your trusted go-to partner or provider? Make sure that whoever you're working with, whether it's our company or somebody else, that you know that they're going to be there for you when you need them, and that they've got the right people to be able to help you, and they have the right understanding of the environment to be able to make sure that as they are recommending things to you and making changes, it's for the greater good of the business. I'm going to wrap it up here unless there are some questions and answers. Do we have any questions from the audience? I don't see any, but I also may not be looking in the right spot.
I don't, oh, I was just gonna say, I don't see any just yet. Somebody asked about the slides being available, and Molly, thank you for answering. Said to everyone, if you didn't see it, there is a link to download the PDF slides from today's presentation in the virtual event bag, so be sure to check that out after this. And no other questions.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you again very much for having me today. You know, I realized that, 25 minutes on a topic like this is absolutely insanely fast. But my contact information is here. Please feel free to reach out to me on any of the platforms or via my email, and I'd be happy to set up an hour or two with you to talk in detail about any of this. Thank you so much for having me, Allison.
Thanks, Luke. Thank you, and thank you all for joining us for Cyburgh Day 1. We will see you again tomorrow at 9 a.m.